I'll be watching you.
Well, the job of our Attorney General is to watch out for the rest of us. But the reason I played that song by the Police, incidentally, is because it always gives me the creepy feeling of Big Brother. And Google, in its Street View situation of patrolling our streets and collecting data and then Wi-Fi data, also gave me the feeling that they were a privately held Big Brother. I want to welcome back to the show George Jensen, who's going to talk with us about why he chose to settle the case, what's in it for the people of Connecticut. Welcome back to the Lisa Wexler Show.
Hey, Lisa. It's great to be back on your show.
Well, thank you. How are you settling into the job?
It's a big job.
Yeah, no.
I feel like I'm, drinking water from a fire hose sometimes, but it's a terrific people here. A lot of really smart attorneys. Public employees sometimes get a bum rap. There are people here who work nights and who work weekends, and they're doing a fantastic job to help the Attorney General.
Well, you made news a few days ago when you decided, now, just to give everyone a little bit of background, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but former Attorney General Richard Blumenthal, now our U.S. Senator, decided that he would lead a coalition of 20 states in a lawsuit against Google, a civil suit, in which he basically alleged that Google, while collecting data for its Street View application, inadvertently or intentionally, and I'm not sure which, stumbled on Wi-Fi data, which was private, unsecured data, and collected it and has it. And Richard Blumenthal and obviously these other attorneys generals felt that this was a violation of the people's privacy.
All true. The coalition continues. It's actually up to 40 states, and we're going to be the lead state in it. The settlement was not about resolving what Google is doing going forward and whether there should be any financial settlement. The specific thing that I settled was Dick, and did a great job. He did a fantastic job. He issued what's called a civil investigative demand. It's like a subpoena, where he asked for Google to disclose specifically what the information was that they collected. In other words, which emails, which URL addresses, and Google refused to comply with that CID, or civil investigative demand. We faced protracted litigation using enormous resources from my limited department. If we continued that piece of the litigation, we settled when Google admitted what we were trying, what would have been the purpose of the subpoena, which is that they admitted, which they had not before, that they did in fact collect private information. And so we have that admission, and what this does is it allows us to go ahead with the other, and none of the other states joined on that particular piece of it. It allows us to go ahead for the settlement negotiations and discussions.
So let's go back a minute. You say that none of the other states joined. Was Richard Blumenthal wrong in terms of trying to pursue getting that information so that the people of Connecticut would know what data might be out there, so maybe they could change their passwords or whatever?
He did the right thing, but again, we're not interested in knowing which emails. In fact, it could be there are potential freedom of information issues about that. If we had that information, it's possible that we could have been forced to disclose it publicly, which is what you don't want in the first place. What we wanted and what we got was Google admitting what they had previously denied, which is that they had collected the private data, and that arms us for the settlement negotiations with the other 40 states. So Dick did the right thing. I think we did the right thing in reaching this very sensible settlement.
I have to go back a minute because and pardon me for thinking strictly like a layman, like a dummy here, but I have to ask you, Attorney General Jensen, without knowing what data Google collected, how can we, the people, know what is out there that may have been that was appropriated without our knowledge?
For the purposes of our settlement negotiations, the fact that they admitted that they got the stuff was sufficient, because we are confident that as a product of the settlement, any captured information will be destroyed.
So you're saying that this is an interim settlement on the way to settling the big picture, which is to destroying that information?
This settles. What it settles is that Google admitted essentially the wrongdoing, the mistake. I shouldn't call it wrongdoing. They did something they now realize they should not have done, and that was the material fact that we wanted to prove. That was the purpose of the CID, the subpoena, in the first place.
No, I hear you. I get it. But I guess, so here's my question for you. At the end of the day, at the end of the settlement, when they've said we've admitted wrongdoing and we have certain data that we know we shouldn't have had, if the state can't test that data against what they say that they collected, how do we know that they will have destroyed all of the data that they say that eventually they'll intend to destroy? Like, how do you know?
I can't get into the too deeply into the subject matter of the negotiations, but I'm confident that we can resolve that issue.
Okay, well, I want to move backward then. I'm glad that you're confident to resolve it, and I hope and assume you're working on behalf of the people of Connecticut, because I want to move back just 2 steps on this issue, because it is of great import to me. You know that France and Germany, each of them independently with their own privacy offers at the highest echelons of their federal governments, have sued Google for invasions of privacy with respect to Street View altogether. And I have always objected to Google Earth and things like this, where a company could take a picture of me and without my permission and of my home and of my asset, and without my permission disclose to the entire world what it is that I own and where I live. And I just want to know your feeling as an Attorney General. Do you think that as a community, as a society, we're going to be putting the brakes on Google with respect to collecting that kind of information altogether?
Again, issues like that, you put your finger on it exactly. I think the European countries have more aggressive laws than we have in this country, but that's the kind of issue that we need to hash out with them. So
are we hashing it out with them?
I'm not in a position to disclose everything I can about any negotiations. I'm just not.
Okay.
I just can't do that.
All right. Well, then I'm in a position, since I know nothing, to ask you on behalf of the people of Connecticut, or at least behalf of this one voter in Connecticut, to please not let the issue rest.
I will not. That is my 100% commitment to you. And in fact, I want to be real clear. If we had pursued the CID, the subpoena, it would have forestalled. It would have been an expensive litigation, sucking up significant resources from the state, and it would have delayed any final resolution of the larger issue that you've correctly identified. Okay, fine. So you're keeping your eye on the ball, the forest for the trees, and you're still at it. Okay. Yes, all right. Well, good. Do that. Because I object to the whole sunbathing notion of me on my deck at Google Earth. You know what I'm saying? And for good reason. Okay, good. Yeah. All right. Let's move on to some other things. I remember when you were running, I told you about Citibank and its mortgage situation and collecting information collecting the float till the end of the month on the payoff for the refinance. For those of you who think I'm speaking in legal speak, I apologize. But essentially, when you pay off a loan, lenders give you the date of your payoff when you pay off the loan, except for Citibank, which requires you to pay off the loan till the end of the month. And so they collect a lot more money, and then they refund it a month later. So they're basically collecting it sometimes for up to 60 days, very often up to 45. And I'm doing a refinance this week with Citicorp, and they're still doing it. Citi Mortgage, and they're still doing it. So Attorney General George Jensen, if you would like my client to be a plaintiff in a class action, more than happy to bring that information to you in terms of representing the people of Connecticut and making them stop, because it's not the right thing to do. You want to, maybe you and I can pursue this off the air. Yes. And get me the specific information. I will. And we'll take a hard look at it. I wish that you would. Yeah. So now tell me, what other cases are things that you want the public to know about that you're pursuing? Tell us about your quest for justice. What's going on? The largest thing that, I've only been on the job for a month, so not everything that's going to happen has happened, obviously. The largest thing that's been dropped into my lap is that Northeast Utilities is seeking a merger with a similar large utility in Massachusetts named Instar, and it would create a one of the largest utilities in the country and has potentially significant ramifications for consumers here in Connecticut and the Northeast. The regulators, the Department of Public Utility Control, initially walked away from what I thought was their responsibility to review that merger for its implications for consumers. And so my department, we filed a request that they review the transaction, and they've now reversed course and are going to have a review. But this could be a big deal down the road. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I'm not alleging that. It's just that when a company of this scope reaching into the lives of most Connecticut residents does something like this, we need to take a hard look at it.
Well, I think we do, because when we lose power, we want that utility to be immediately available to us at all times. It's a pretty scary thing. It's happened to me on many more than one occasion. And you want to hear a funny story? Attorney General George Jensen, many years ago, I was at some kind of a legal something or other, and the chair at the time of Northeast Utilities was speaking in front of a group of people. And I'll never forget this, because I raised my hand because he was talking about the finances of Northeast Utilities. And I said, why don't you put something in your capital budget so that long term you are putting everything underground instead of just in the new developments? Why don't you capitalize this, but understand that it's a great long-term investment for the people of Connecticut to put these utilities underground, after all, right? In the next snowstorm and whatever, right? And he basically totally put me down in front of the thing, and he said, we just don't have money for that. End of story, next question. And I thought, and I still think that is so short-sighted. When we had Aquarian dig the water tunnels underneath Route 33, which went all the way through Weston, Wilton, Ridgefield, they didn't bury the utility lines at the same time. And it was such a perfect opportunity to do so. They were already digging the trenches. This was maybe 3 years ago.
Yeah, that would have been. Yeah.
I don't understand. I think that they've dropped the ball, the utilities, when it comes to a lot of long-term capital improvements in our state.
Well, that's one of the problems with the corporate sector is in today's society, all too often it's the next quarter and the next year, not 5 years, 10 years down the road.
Did it used to be different? Were public utilities ever longer thinkers?
I think that in a regulated environment, yes, that was a greater opportunity for that kind of long-term thinking.
So what you would do as Attorney General is make sure that if there is a merger with another utility, that the same staffing is in place for the people of Connecticut? Like, literally, what would you do to make sure that we're protected?
Well, that's what we got to review. We have to get our arms around the project. We want to make sure that they remain committed to, as you suggested, adequate staffing here in Connecticut. We don't want jobs. We don't want a power shift to move up to Massachusetts. Your experience notwithstanding, there is an advantage to being able to have appropriate corporate officials here in this state so that we can see them on a regular basis as opposed to being controlled from a place in Boston. How
many lawsuits right now, Attorney General George Jensen, are pending in your office?
Oh, at any time there's thousands and thousands. But there are lawsuits and there are lawsuits. We handle about 25,000 child support actions per year. We handle about 13 or 14,000 child advocacy actions, which is when a kid is subject of abuse or neglect. Over the course of a year, there'll be about 1,000 workers' compensation cases filed against the state. There'll be
your defense in that case.
Yeah, exactly. About 9,000 debt collection actions undertaken by the state. And then this morning I was briefed on some potential Medicaid fraud issues that may be coming up. And the AG's office under Dick Blumenthal has brought in tens of millions of dollars on these cases over the last 4 or 5 years, but each case can take 2 or 3 or 4 years to move down the pike to a resolution. So they're big cases and much smaller cases, but they're all important to the people that are affected by them.
Well, Attorney General George Jensen, we invite you back on the show as a regular to keep us apprised of how you're fighting for the people of Connecticut, and go get them with the child support.
Oh, thank you. It's a terrific office here, really wonderful people, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity.
Thanks for being on the show.
Take care.